So today we're going to be learning about kids. Well, we've already been talking about World War II. So we're going to be reading a book about kids who survived to tell their stories. And it's pretty interesting. And I thought it would be really interesting for you guys because they're kids around your age. And so it would be like what it would be like if you were there. So we're also going to be going and talking, answering and thinking up questions for the stories, and we're going to be talking about QRA strategy. And this is a reading comprehension strategy to help form questions and answers in the text better. And the Q stands for questions, the A stands for answers, and the R is relationship. So question, answer, relationship throughout the text. And it's really easy. It's just, there's 4 types of questions that go with it. They're super easy. The first one is right there. Now, right there questions are found in the text. They're right there in the text, and it's super easy to find. So an example would be like, who is the main character? The main character right there in the text, super easy to find. The next one is think and search. Now, think and search is also found in the text, and it's really easy to find as well. You have to think about what the question is asking and then search for it in the text, really. So an example would be, how did the character return home? So you can think about how they returned home and then find it in the text easily. The next type, the third type, is author and you questions. Now these next 2 are in your head questions. So the author and you are questions that you have to think about in your head that are about you and the author, kind of like points of view and stuff. So an example would be, do you agree with the author about blank? So you'd have to think in your head if you agree with the author's point of view or what they're trying to say and come up with it in your head. The final type is on my own questions. So on my own questions are all in your head. You don't need a book with it. It's just like, how do you feel about this topic? So how do you feel about the Holocaust, for example, since we're talking about World War II? So how do you feel about the Holocaust? It's just, you don't need a book. You know in your head what you feel. And so that's what that question is. So we're going to go into reading this book. It's called Remember World War II, Kids Who Survived Tell Their Stories. So I am just going to read. There's a whole bunch of different passages by kids. And there's 3 different chapters. So chapter 1 is World War II begins in Europe. So it's just kids from Europe, Germany, where Hitler was in the world. The second chapter is the Pacific, so Hawaii, Tokyo, Japan, over there where the bombings were for Pearl Harbor and stuff. And then the last one's Homefront America. And this chapter is really cool because most of them are from Missouri and Kansas. So I thought this book would be really interesting since we live in Missouri. One of them is actually from Kansas City, Missouri, which we're going to read. So I thought that was really cool. So the first one we're going to read, here's the first page on the first chapter. It's going to be Olga. Now, Olga is from Germany, and this was August 1933. It was a long time ago. Okay, so Olga and her father walked hand in hand from their home in Nuremberg to a rally and parade for Hitler's Nazi party. Swastika flags filled every window. The city swarmed with uniformed men. The Secret Service wore black, and the SA, the stormtroopers, in brown. Olga remembers as we passed them, they said, "Heil Hitler," accompanied by a stiff-arm salute. When we arrived at the parade grounds, my right arm ached from all the saluting. I squeezed past the legs of adults to join children in the front row. From a distance, an open black limousine advanced slowly. As I neared, I saw Hitler's face, his black mustache, piercing blue eyes, and thin smile. He stood behind the windshield of the car, his right arm rigged in a salute to the thousands hailing him. Right in front of me, the car stopped. Hitler stepped out, walked briskly along the line of spectators, and shook the outstretched hands of all the children, including me. Then he turned around and stepped back into the car. Thrilled, I ran to my father. I tugged his shirt sleeve to get his attention and boosted. Our Führer shook hands with me. Father just looked down at me and didn't say one word. So that's the first little passage by her from Germany. Now we're going to keep our thoughts to ourselves for now. We're going to read two more. So we're going to read one from the Pacific and one from America. And then we're going to go over a few questions. So now let's go to the Pacific one. And this is Judy Rhodes from Honolulu, Hawaii. So the Pacific, if you can see on this map, the United States is right here. Hawaii's right here. Alaska's up here. So Hawaii, and then all of this is the Pacific, because the Hawaii is in the Pacific Ocean. So all of this is the Pacific. Japan, China, all that. So Judy Rhodes, this is from December 7th, 1941, which was the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. So, on December 7th, 1941, 6-year-old Judy Rhodes and her younger sister lived about 10 miles away from Pearl Harbor on a green hillside in a valley above Honolulu. Unexplained noises, distant bombs, and the buzz of airplanes drew the girls out the kitchen door to the back porch. Judy remembers seeing a small plane disappear in a puff of black smoke. We thought it was a tag game as we watched planes dip and twist in the skies over Pearl Harbor and Hickam Field. Our dad heard us and came out onto the porch. He told us, "Get inside now." He herded us and Mom into the kitchen and turned on the radio. The insistent message stated, "All military personnel report to duty stations immediately." My father, an active duty Navy carpenter with more than 20 years of service, didn't say much. He just hurriedly changed into khakis. He hugged us tight and told us to listen to our mother. Our mom must have been terrified for him to go into a war zone, but she kept any fear to herself. She bravely walked Dad to the car, told him to be careful, and then sent him off with a kiss. In the afternoon, the governor of Hawaii declared martial law. Before dark, our neighbor was appointed warden of the area. He asked my mother to be prepared with weapons and have them in easy reach in case the Japanese invaded. My mother put a hammer, meat cleaver, and a butcher knife on the dining room table. The warden's second instruction was to maintain a total blackout. Not even a sliver of light can shine out of this house, he warned us. Thirdly, he told us to watch the skies for enemy paratroops. My sister and I were given the job of looking for anything resembling an umbrella coming down. Then the watch was to last until the next morning. Mom brought us milk and cookies to help us stay awake. We didn't see Daddy for 2 days. When he got home, his uniform was dirty and torn. He showered and slept deeply for several hours. And that is someone from the Pacific. So it's two different. So now we've seen Germany and the Pacific side. Now we're going to skip to chapter 3. It's really cool, and we'll read most of them later, but I wanted to show you some things right now. Sure. Okay. So, James J. Fisher, December 7th, 1941, from Kansas City, Missouri. And this is him and his brother Mike. I thought this was pretty interesting that someone from Kansas City was here. So, on the mainland of the United States, December 7th, 1941 was like any other Sunday. 5-year-old James sprawled on the floor next to the big upright radio. He thumbed through the comic pages of his dad's newspaper. I vaguely remember something coming over the radio when my father, the smartest man I ever knew, said, "Son, this is important. Remember this." And I did remember. In all the years we had the radio, no matter how exciting the Lone Ranger or the Shadow got, I couldn't look at it and not remember Pearl Harbor in the afternoon when everything happened or changed. There's more to it, but we'll read that later. It's really exciting. So we're going to go over the 4 questions once again. So we have right there, which is right there in the text. We have think and search, which is also in the text. And you have to think about it a little bit. It's not right there. You can see it, like who the main character was. Like who the main character were in here was Olga, Judy, and James. It's kind of how they did, like how James found out about Pearl Harbor. Like he was sitting there with his dad listening to the radio, and his dad told him to remember it. That's kind of a think and search question. So the other 2 are in your head. So the author and you. So how you, like, do you agree with the author or not? On my own questions, or how you feel about the topic, like just thinking it in your head, solely in your head, without having to read the book at all. So I'm gonna go over a few. I have 8 questions here that I'm gonna read to you guys, and we're gonna decide what category they go in. Okay, so the first question is, what purpose did the author accomplish by writing these passages? What type of question do you think that is? The next one is, explain how each child's story was different. Think in your head what kind of question that is. Would you need just to think in your head about it, or would you need to look in the book to explain how each child's story was different? The next question is, what thoughts did you have after reading these 3 passages? Can you think about just the thoughts in your head? Do you have to use the text? The 4th one is, what kind of parade did Olga and her father walk to? The 5th one is, summarize Judy Rhodes' day on December 7th, 1941. Would you need the book for that, to go back and look? Do you just need your head and not the book? What am I on? 6th? The 6th question, why do you think the author wrote each chapter at a different part of the world during the war? Why do you think the author wrote each chapter at a different part of the world during the war? All right, I'm on 7. When did the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor? Now we should know that in our heads what date that was. But is that something you go look at right there in the book for, or is it just solely in your head? You would never need to know out of a book. The last question is, how do you feel about this topic? Is that solely just in your head? Is that in the book at all? All right. Great job, guys. Now I'm going to be giving you a passage out of this book. I've printed off individual passages from children in this book, and I'm going to provide you with a few questions. 4 questions. I'll provide you with 4 questions, 1 for each type. So right there, a think and search, on my own, author and you question. So I'm going to provide you with 4 questions for each type, and you're going to have to tell me which ones they are. And then you're going to write your own 4 questions, 1 for each type. And then that is it.